Hey guys, it's Shaylin. I'm here today with another rating video.
With me, I'm trying to slide into frame, but I can't because there's a carpet.
We're back with another episode of your favorite YouTube talk show that airs extremely infrequently, is run by weird siblings, and is completely unstructured, and is about fantasy.
And we just do, with no planning whatsoever.
It's Talking About Fantasy episode 2. I'm here with special guest, my brother, Jake. Videos with him are the most requested thing on my channel. I think you guys like him more than you like me because...
Who wouldn't?
Wow. Let's talk about fantasy. We're going to have a little discussion today about cross-genre in fantasy, bringing in elements of other genres like comedy, maybe the things to consider if you're going to bring in a romantic subplot, all that kind of stuff.
Let's go first with satire, which, if you've read fantasy, almost all of them have some aspect of satire. At least one character is trying to be funny very often.
Case in point, the King's Wit.
Yes, King's Wit is from Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson.
You know what his job is? He just follows the king around and shit talks people. It's amazing.
Most of them aren't that obvious, literally their job is to insult people. But if you think of Steelheart, the main character, lots of satire in Steelheart. Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, there was a ridiculous amount of satire. In A War Between the Summer and Winter Courts of Fairy, the main character's war cry was, "I don't believe in fairies." It really is one of the things that make it enjoyable, because I think when you have a fantasy element, you can also, use satire a little bit differently, because it's just such a different environment.
A lot of the time with satire and fantasy, it makes, for better or for worse, you could argue probably this is a good thing or a bad thing, but it can make the series kind of self-aware. If a character is making fun of an element of the world that is created for the book, it's kind of like the series is becoming self-aware and it's poking fun at itself.
I love it when that happens.
That's my favorite. I feel like it kind of makes it more real, because if you're gonna plant characters in a fantasy world, I feel like it's kind of weird to imply that in this world or in this time period, people aren't funny.
But now, let's move on to the next subgenre, which I believe you mentioned was romance.
If you know my work, which I don't know how much you know about my work, but I'm very minimal with how much romance I include in my work. I'm very sparing. I use romance very sparingly in my works. If you were to look at just the majority of books, especially the majority of YA, most of them have romance in them. It's pretty much a default. People add romance because it is just a default. It's a convention of, and you know what, it's not even a convention of the genre, it's a convention.
Of every genre.
Of almost every genre.
If you have fine. A lot of the time it has subplot.
Because people add romance to their book, maybe not even conscious. I don't think people are conscious every book has a romance, so I need to have one in my book.
It's it's another subplot.
It's almost what you're used to the point that it might not even be a conscious choice you're making. So what I would say is, if you're going to add romance to your book, it should be a conscious choice that you're making because it benefits the story. Because a lot of the time, I don't think it benefits the story, and if you could remove the romance and the story would be exactly the same, obviously it wouldn't be exactly the same, but it could function the same and you'd end up at the same end point. You don't need it. I think the problem a lot of times is you end up with these very disconnected storylines of the main plot and the romance that aren't connected enough. They just both coexist in the same space, and so it doesn't feel important because it's the story could function without it.
If you look at really experienced authors versus less experienced authors, Brandon Sanderson, all the romances work with the plot really well.
Yeah. Ellen and Vin, my ship.
Yeah, you only, Brandon Sanderson writes it in a way where you almost can't have the series without
any
aspect.
Not just that, any aspect of it.
Same with Jim Butcher, Furies of Cauldron.
By the way, drinking game, take a shot every time Jake mentions Furies of Cauldron.
And then you look at less experienced writers, like Sarah J. Maas or Shaylin Bishop. Shots fired. Just kidding. She doesn't do that much romance, so you don't really notice it.
There is romance in Soul Child, but it's hella slow burner.
Yes, and I ship it, and I know what the final result will be.
Yeah.
They they just add the romance because they feel like they should. A lot of the time when people are less experienced.
But I feel like Sarah J. Maas is a bad example because I get the feeling that it's that's what she wants to write.
That's a good point.
You haven't read her other series, but it's like, I think Throne of Glass is a very romance-heavy fantasy novel. Court of Thorns and Roses is a romance novel in a fantasy setting.
Yeah.
You haven't read it, but, like, I don't think that Sarah J. Maas is defaulting. I think it's just that's what she writes.
And there's a difference between a character having romance motivations to, like, do stuff.
That's one of the best ways that you can integrate.
Like, oh, look, I need to save this person who there's a romance thing with, oh yeah, there's this actual plot going on that we care about, and half the time is going to be spent on this romance that if I wanted to read about, I wouldn't be reading fantasy.
You have nothing else to say about fantasy. It's all you read. I want to say something.
Okay.
About fantasy books and how freaking long they are. Okay? Who's read this book? The Name of the Wind.
She just asked you, like, who's read this book, like she's talking to a room of people and you can raise your hands.
This book is, first of all, has hella small font and is... Okay, well, it's only 600... Actually, no, I'm Googling the word count. This book is 259,000 words long. Book 2, which I haven't read yet, The Wise Man's Fear, 399,000
Okay, what
words.
is with Patrick Rothfuss stopping 1,000 words short of an even number of words? Like,
I like this book, okay? I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really interesting, just different format than you usually see. I was excited to see a first-person fantasy book. I really like the frame structure of this. However,
okay.
I feel like it could have been much more concise.
Yeah.
There were so many points where I was like, if you're a writer and you know the techniques, scene and summary, for pacing, scene is obviously like writing something out in a scene, and summary is summarizing it. Everything is scene. Okay, the scene that always comes back to mind, this isn't really a spoiler, is when he's bartering for the horse.
Oh, yeah, that was...
That's a really long scene. It's long. It goes on and on and on. The scene of him bartering for a horse. Okay, in the end, he gets a horse. You could have just said, and I bartered for the horse and I got the horse, okay, but more artfully than that. Said it goes on and on and on, and I feel like the only point was to show that Kvoth has good bartering skills, which I already know because Kvoth is good at everything. Kvoth is the most Gary Stu character I have ever encountered in my life. Like,
he's pretty Mary Gary.
Is he bad at anything?
No, he's pretty much good at everything except asking girls out. He's really, really brutal at that.
True, just make a move. I felt like there were so many scenes where the only purpose was to show me that Kvoth was good at the thing, which, by the way, it could have been told to me through summary.
One of the interesting things about this book, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, is throughout, he's good at, like, everything. No, this
is an interesting observation.
For almost all his skills, there is always one character that is better at him than that thing, but isn't as well-rounded.
He is the most jack of all trades of all time.
No, he's master of all, just not quite as master as this other person.
Yeah, he's second best at everything.
Yeah, like, for example, he got into the university at a really young age. There's one character, I'm not going to say who got in at an even younger age. He is really witty. There's one character who's even wittier. Etc. There's just always one person who's better than him at every one thing.
I did feel a little lost in this book.
Yeah, that's because you're not as smart as me.
No, but correct me if I'm wrong, like, I think it might just be because we're in first person, but, like, I felt a little, like, I didn't really understand the economy.
Yeah.
Even though it was so important. I understood the magic system to
How much is a talent? A talent in some cases is like 2 months worth of food, and then in another cases a pair of shoes is like 5 of them.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in that situation for economy, no one has shoes. Or clothes.
Talents.
Clothes are like 2 talents for sure.
I don't
Everyone is walking around naked in this economy. Anyways, the economy was not well done, but you know what? Patrick Rothfuss isn't an economist, so... Yeah.
I saw an interview with him where he said he picked the economy to be the richest aspect of this book because he's super into economics.
Oh, well then, Patrick Rothfuss, get your shit together.
Like, I saw Pat Rothfuss is super interesting if you can listen to interviews with him. He said that his number one tip for writing fantasy is to use your geekiness and pick the thing you're super geeky about and make it really rich. Kind of like how George R. R. Martin is a historian, and he picked the economics, and Tolkien picked the languages.
Brandon Sanderson picked religion.
Exactly.
How much is a talent?
There's probably people out here who do really understand the economic system, and they're like,
okay, someone asked, how much is a talent? How come a talent can buy 2 months worth of shoes but can't even buy a shirt? Someone answer me that. I honestly want to know. Tell me that, and I'll tell you how Soul Child ends.
No.
Okay, I'll not tell you how Soul Child ends, but I'll really want to.
Yeah, but like I was saying, this book could have been much shorter.
Yes.
I feel like just because, again, it's a thing that, it's a convention that fantasy's hella long. And so, I mean, a lot of fantasy readers don't mind that. Like, if it's what you're used to, you
don't mind hella long books. I've read that, like, 2 days.
But it could have been more concise. A book is its strongest when it tells a story in the fewest number of words as possible.
Yeah.
And still, it's like...
Well, like, it has to tell the same story equally effectively.
Yeah.
Like, I can't just tell the story of, like, Jesus and just be like, there's a dude, he died. Like, that's really concise, but not good writing.
I have a question for you. What makes a good fantasy antagonist?
Alright, I'm gonna have to go through some antagonists here. One thing, they're usually pretty mysterious. Like, usually there's a lot you don't know about them. Like, the Lord Ruler, he mysterious as fuck. Like, let's be honest. The Vord Queen from Furies of Cauldron, once again mysterious. Maeve, Mistborn, try to be more mysterious.
I don't know if I would list mysterious as a good quality for an antagonist.
But for fantasy, okay, if you know everything about them, they're either going to be, because it's magic, they're either going to be about as strong as the main character, in which case it doesn't seem as hard, or they're going to be impossibly strong, so it's going to be, like, unrealistic.
Okay, but, like, hear me out here. If an antagonist is super mysterious, we don't know what we're up against.
Exactly. Yeah, you should know vague details.
So you don't know what's at stake. If you don't know what you're up against, you don't really understand the stakes.
You know what's at stake. Like, you know what their goal is. Like, you know what the Lord Ruler wants.
Yeah,
which
but
is
you don't really understand the obstacles.
Okay, you know there's some obstacles, like, you can behead him and he'll just be like,
what?
That's annoying. But you don't know exactly what makes him that powerful. Like, okay, try and think of a good, high fantasy antagonist that's not mysterious. A Taurus.
Not mysterious right now, but he's not an antagonist yet.
Okay. Even Aedos is a bit mysterious, and he's not that good of a...
That's because he's not the main antagonist.
Yeah, and the main antagonists lose in the win, who we know nothing about, and are really mysterious. It's like their main quality. It's the first thing you ever told me about Nguyen. You were describing the 4 places, and you're like, Nguyen is really secretive, no one knows what's going on.
Yeah, but they're not, at this point, they're not really the antagonist yet.
Okay, even when they are,
then
they're still going to be mysterious.
Them.
You will... Okay, it's not like
them.
complete mystery, like, it's not knowing nothing.
Okay.
But... You can't know everything about your antagonist in a high fantasy, because as I said,
well, obviously
there are 2 possible things.
That's
Either
impossible.
Okay, you can't know too much about their abilities. Like the Lord Ruler, we knew he could heal really fast, and could do some other things that Vin couldn't. But other than that,
Vin is like my favorite.
Vin is pretty awesome.
Can I just say?
Yes,
I love
but
Vin.
other than that, you didn't know that much. Like, the Vord... Okay, I shouldn't talk about the Vord Queen you haven't actually read. The Kandrian are like, please be more mysterious. But you know some things about them. Like, you know a little bit about how they work. You know that they're good at killing people.
Good quality in an antagonist?
Yes, kind of useful in a high fantasy. If you're not good at killing people and you're an antagonist in a high fantasy, you're probably in trouble. And that they, like, can pop up at times that they're not expected. That's, like, all you know about the Kandrian. And they're... effective.
Yeah,
also,
but the
Thorn of Glass, like, you know, what are the Varg people?
The Val?
No, it starts with a V.
The Valg, right?
Super mysterious. Like, you know, like, they're bad guys, and they have, like, black shadow magic and stuff. But
and I don't really feel threatened by them, because I don't understand what they're about.
Okay, give an example of a good antagonist in high fantasy that doesn't have at least a large element of mystery to them.
I don't know.
1.
But, like, the more, in my opinion,
No.
the more you understand an antagonist, the stronger they are because they feel like an actual character.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The antagonist... Okay, so usually in high fantasy, your main character is magic, unless you're Tabby. The main antagonist is also magic, and usually more magic. If you know about, like, exactly why or how they're more magic, you'll either be like... You'll either know how much stronger they are than your protagonist and be like, okay, it's not realistic if you win here. Or you, like, will know that they're barely more powerful, and you'll be like, it's honestly not that much of a
Can I
threat.
present a counter argument because we're really disagreeing on this one?
Okay.
If I don't understand an antagonist as a character and they don't feel like a real character, why do I care about
Did you care about the Lord Ruler?
defeating them? No, let me finish. Okay, let's say you're watching a hockey game. We're Canadian. You know, our home game, you know, Canucks are playing. First of all, they're playing a game against a team that we don't really know anything about and we don't really care about. When they win, we're like, yay, go Canucks. And then there's that game where they play that team that we hate. But we know this team, like, we're way more invested because we understand the antagonist. We didn't really understand the antagonist of the first game, and so we're happy when they won because we were happy because our team won, not because the other team was defeated. That's why I think that your antagonist should, like, I'm not saying their abilities have to be crystal clear, but as a character they should be clear.
Okay, what they're going to do, like the threat, yeah, you have to know that. Like the Lord Ruler, it's oppress all the people. Void Queen, it's kill everyone. So
It's usually kill everyone.
A lot of the time, or pretty much universally, they have a motive other than I want everyone dead. Like the Lord Ruler. The Lord Ruler has, once you finish the series, like, oh, he had a motive here. It would not be as interesting as a story if you knew why the Lord Ruler had that system and wanted to oppress people. So that has to remain mysterious until the end.
But I think as
also,
a character,
you can't know the extent of his powers.
That's interesting to me that you're saying you shouldn't know the extent of the antagonist's powers.
Yeah, because
you know the extent of your protagonist's powers, which means...
you need to vaguely know that your antagonist...
What are the stakes? You don't have to define stakes. Okay, we're gonna just have to agree to disagree on this one.
Okay, fine. We agree to disagree.
And you know what? I think maybe this is the reason that as a reader, I don't really latch on to antagonists as characters. I don't really care about them that much. And I think it's because, like we've been talking about, a lot of the antagonists I've read are very vague, and I don't really care, and I don't feel invested in their defeat. I feel more invested in the protagonist's survival than the antagonist's defeat. And you should be invested in both. And it's because I don't really, I guess, a personal preference, honestly, I don't really like villains. Like, I'd rather everybody be hella morally gray.
One other thing that was mentioned,
anti-heroes.
because this started as what makes a good antagonist, and then we went on a tangent, which is probably going to be edited out.
No, this was a good tangent.
One other thing that was kind of mentioned is that usually they'll have a goal, which is clearly morally bad and evil, but usually their motives, it's a pretty boring antagonist if their motive is, I want everyone to be dead.
A bad antagonist is, I'm doing the thing because I'm evil.
A good antagonist thinks they're the good guy.
Okay, I have to say I disagree with that somewhat because I do think that there are bad people who know they're bad people.
Yes, okay.
But I agree that the deep down motive shouldn't just be, because I'm evil, right? YOLO, I'm evil, like, no. At what point should that continue to be short mystery? I'm gonna use my own book here. We have Eidos as the antagonist near the beginning of the series until a more pressing threat emerges. He does have motive beyond because I'm evil. You don't really know what it is, well, until like book 2. Maybe book 3. I haven't decided yet. At what point do you reveal that motive? Forget Eidos.
It has to be either after he's defeated or close to when he's defeated. If you reveal it too early...
Okay, but then, see, this is my dilemma, because that was what my plan was going into the series, but then a lot of people will be like, his motivations are kind of flat. He's just a stereotypical bad guy, because and I agree, because that's the motivations I presented you with, because I didn't reveal the true motivations, because I was trying to be secretive, which I'm now disagreeing with myself.
I think if you're just writing a book that, like, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it so he seems like his motivations make a lot of sense and are clear throughout the book. They have to make sense at the end. If you're gonna try and make it so people will get full enjoyment out of the series after, like, and if they quit at any point throughout the series, you're not gonna succeed. If you quit, like, at the end of the Final Empire, you're gonna think that the Lord Ruler had pretty boring motives and just wanted to oppress people.
True.
Even if the motives of your antagonist are clear near the end, that's fine. If you're gonna try and write a series where, like, it's viable to quit at, like, pretty much any point and understand characters' motivations, you're not going to write a good series.
So full motivation should not be clear until the very end.
Or at least not too early. Like, if the full motivations are revealed a little bit before they're defeated, I think that's okay.
But see, that's my problem, because that's what I was trying to do here.
And I think you're having the problem of people saying, we don't understand his motivations, which makes sense, because they're halfway through the first book. You don't understand the motivations of your main antagonist right away in almost any first novel of high fantasy.
I agree.
That's fine. Okay. They're not really... You don't need to know yet.
Yeah, that's what I agree with that. I agreed with that until I had beta readers. And now I don't know what I believe.
It's because you're feeling pressure to make everyone like every aspect of your book.
Yes, I agree.
Also, there's one thing you can do to make that better. You have to make it so your protagonist really thinks they know the motivation of your antagonist. Calcier really just thinks, oh, I just think, Lord, and you have to have them like question that sometimes, like run into stuff like, that doesn't really make sense.
I'm addressing that in book 2 a lot.
Yeah.
No, not in book 2, in my rewrite of this, in some things I'm changing.
Our protagonist obviously thinks that Aedos, so Raya obviously thinks that she knows Aedos' motivations.
But she's wrong.
She has to run into things that be like, wait, if that's his motivations, that doesn't really make sense. Okay, so dislike, unsubscribe, leave hateful comments, swear a bunch, call us both call her names. I'm obviously amazing. Yeah, do all of that.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, you can always send me an ask on Tumblr. I'll see you in another video. Peace out.
Oh, I forgot to say, everyone, Merry Christmas. Your Christmas present is a video with me in it. Aren't I modest and humble? Now I'm trying to slide outside the door, but I can't because the chair keeps turning. Stop filming, this is ridiculous.